This week I had the privilege of chatting with Dr. Jayson Dibble. I first met Jayson about 2 years ago when we served together on the Laughter RX committee for LaughFest and Gilda's Club in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Jayson is a professor of communications at Hope College who draws upon a deep-seated curiosity about the world and a genuine desire to connect with people. He's a scientist, a researcher, a talented communicator, and just an all-around good guy. I think you'll appreciate his humble skepticism as he shares a treasure trove of information and insights. Thanks for watching and enjoy the chat. Welcome to a quick chat with the unemployed alcoholic. Who am I talking to?
My name is Jayson Dibble. I teach 13th through 16th grade at Hope College.
13th through 16th, huh?
Yes, so I am a college professor in the Department of Communication.
All right. What drew you into communications?
A weird thing, actually. So I went through college thinking I wanted to become an obstetrician and go to medical school. And I actually got to the point where I did take the MCAT. And just something happened where I just didn't really want to become that kind of a doctor as much anymore. But I still had a soft spot for the healthcare world. So, to make a short story boring, what I ended up doing was going back for a second bachelor's degree to college. And the plan was to combine my pre-med training with a public relations degree and then go into pharmaceutical sales because, they make a lot of money and you get the free car and you get all the free swag. And I thought that'd be great. What a good life. And somewhere along the line, I became bit by the research bug. And I ended up not finishing the public relations degree, but where I went to college, the public relations program was housed within their Department of Communication. So I was taking all of these basic communication classes, and I was really falling in love with the subject material. I loved my hard science background, but I've never seen a molecule, when other than you make the styrofoam balls and you stick them together and they go, well, there's water. But I can see self-disclosure and I can see reciprocity and I can see all of these things that I was learning about in my communication classes. And somewhere along the line, I decided, I've got this degree. I wonder if I could get a master's degree in communication and see what that turns into. Let me back up a second. My soft spot for the healthcare field was such that when I started to question whether I wanted to go to medical school, I found myself being less interested in medicine in the sense of studying it to become a doctor and more interested in what made certain doctors have better bedside manner than others. And so when I kind of shared that with the communication people that I was taking new classes with, they said there are people who study patient doctor communication and they're in communication departments. And that's how I kind of stumbled into communication. And now what I do is I do research on trying to help doctors break bad news to their patients and do a better job of breaking bad news to their patients. So I still kind of have one foot in the healthcare world, but I have another foot somewhere else. And it didn't require me to go to medical school, but I'm still doing something that I find to be rewarding and really, really important, especially nowadays in the COVID pandemic that we're facing right now. Bad news is almost a daily thing for our
Yeah.
healthcare heroes. And so that's kind of the long story of how I ended up into communication.
Wow. So it sounds like early on, you just had ingrained in you a genuine curiosity.
Yeah, I've always been that kid, always wondering about learning, which is nice because now I work at Hope College. And one of the things that we put in our mission statement here is we want to create lifelong learners. It's sort of the liberal arts philosophy, which fits for me because that's what I've always been. I was always that kid who would, throw flies into the spider web to see what the spider would do. My dad and mom would take us on walks in the woods and we would go flip over logs to look for salamanders and centipedes and worms and just to see what's in there. And we didn't always know what the answers were. It's not like we were just a bunch of biologists or anything who knew all the facts, but we were just curious to see what the patterns were in the world. My first professor job was at the University of Hawaii. And on my days off, I would go snorkeling or scuba diving anywhere. Right off the coast of Waikiki, I would go. So you have these giant high rise hotels, and I would just take my snorkel and stick my face down in about 3 feet of water and just stop. And if you just stop and look around, the ocean floor comes to life. The critters down there start doing their crittering. The plants down there start doing their plant thing. And there's plenty to see if you're just curious enough to look where you are and look around.
Sounds like you've got some really positive memories of discovery.
Oh, there are tons of them. Yeah. I mean, those are my favorite memories. Being curious about the world is something that I wouldn't trade for anything. I just like learning new things. Some of the ways that I play that out then is in other places. Obviously, I've got my job as a college professor, but in my off hours, I'm also a football referee.
Okay.
And so I work high school football in the area and also small college. And one of the fun things there is I like to intellectualize a little bit with the football rules. You know, there's the ways that the coaches talk about it and the ways that the TV commentators talk about it. But the officials, it's kind of interesting because we have to be able to connect with each of those different kinds of audiences. But we also have to have sort of an intellectual understanding of the rules that often doesn't get talked about either by the TV people or by the coaches. And so it's really interesting. It's a nice situation where I have to practice my communicating, my connecting, but I also get to stay curious about the world and practice, studying the rules, working in and out of play situations. Well, what happens if he fumbles here and the guy runs the ball back here and then he fumbles it back? What are you going to do with the clock? Things like, that you may never actually see in a game, but it's fun to work through those different what's the word I'm looking for? Those different
Potential outcomes?
yeah, the potential. There was a fancier word about that, but yeah, yes. The different outcomes that can happen. And
So so
yeah.
it sounds like there's a repeating pattern here. It sounds like there's a curiosity that drives discovery and intellectualization that is then followed by communication.
Yes. So if you were to ask, I guess one thing that who I am, I'm curious and I also love connecting with others. And so the communication is a really nice way to combine those interests. So I have an intellectual hunger for learning anything about the world. I was trained at Michigan State. That's where I got my PhD. And they treat the study of communication as a science. So it was nice because all of my hard science training, which I hate the word hard science versus soft science, by the way, science is science. It's a process of inquiry and answering questions about the world. It's not a particular content area. So,
Well, it sounds like there's some pretty high emotions around that.
well, and it's not that it's, something that I'm gonna go to war over, but I do, if I were to try and help encourage people to think about it differently, I would say try to understand science as science. It's a neutral process. It's not a specific area of study. It's more of a procedure or a set of tools that you use to try and uncover answers about the world. And there's lots of ways you can uncover answers about the world. Science is just one of those.
I too have a deep respect for the scientific method and the scientific process, and I feel like there is some misunderstanding out there. Like for me, when I look at science or even medicine as a part of science, it seems like we're very good at finding correlation, and we're okay at theorizing on causation, but we're not so good at identifying and quantifying ramification.
Well, right. And yeah, sure. Part of it is recognizing where science can and can't go.
Hmm.
And I always teach my students because I teach our stats and research methods class here at Hope. So that is kind of our social scientific research methods class, where our communication students get some scientific training. And in that class, I'm always teaching them to be humble skeptics. So
Mm.
start off with the idea that I could be wrong about this. In fact, I would take it a step further and say, you know what? I'm probably wrong about this. That's a
Mm.
good, humble attitude. And then recognize where you can use your scientific tools and where you should leave other tools to do their job. So, for
Mm,
example, we focus on the empirical things that you can detect with your senses. Um, this isn't science isn't the time for us to get into your theological debate or your
mhm.
metaphysical debates and so on. That's why we have theological leaders and why we have, philosophers who can help us think about big ideas. But the world is big enough that we can use our scientific tools to answer a lot of questions. And I'm fine with that because there's still too much work for us to do that relies on actual science.
Mm,
So yeah, part of the question, we can figure out a correlation, causation, and all those are certainly noble goals of science. Working through the ramifications or the ethical implications, right? This is when we got to bring in some of the philosophers and we got to bring in some of the people who can help us consider the values behind what we're doing there. So one of my goals is to have people trust science, and I think part of helping people trust science is to get them to trust scientists because science itself can't do itself. It's people who practice science. And
mhm,
so we
yeah.
need to learn how to trust that your scientists are making good faith efforts to try and answer questions about the world. And hopefully, in a place like Hope here, we try to do it in a noble way that benefits other people.
Hmm. Boy, you said something there. You said a humble skepticism.
Yeah.
Man, I hope I have that in my everyday life because that seems pretty valuable.
Yeah, humble skeptic. I mean, it kind of comes from the idea of, okay, so now we're going to get really deep for those of you who really want to understand scientific philosophy. There's a scientific philosopher whose name was Karl Popper. And Popper's idea was that science should be in the business of falsification, not confirmation.
Mm.
So, in other words, you should be not just looking for situations where your idea shows to be correct, but you should be intentionally looking for situations where your idea is wrong or where your idea is
Ah.
false. So, if I have a theory that all the swans in the world are white, then confirmation would be going around looking for more and more white swans, which is pretty easy to do. It's a much stronger test or a stricter test if you actively look for non white swans, which
Mm.
takes a different kind of focus. And then if it turns out you can't find any, then your theory stands up to falsification attempts. But the idea is you should be trying to knock down your idea, not looking to save your idea. And it's the ideas that survive these strongest tests that we should put our most faith in.
Man, that's deep and that's powerful.
I don't know
It's
who needs to hear that, but that's what we talk about in our research methods class. And that's how I was trained as a scientist.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I love, thinking about the overlap here. I'm a man of faith,
Sure.
and I tend to try to apply that same mentality or that same systematic thinking towards faith. It seems like a lot of people will have an idea, and they'll look through scriptures to find a verse that will validate that,
Yeah.
which can lead to things being taken out of context. It can certainly lead to misinterpretation and problems. And what I think, if my God is as powerful as I think he is, uh, then it's my thought that if I read through scriptures and I find anything that contradicts what I'm thinking, then that means I don't understand it.
Sure.
You know, it's not about confirmation or validation. It's about using that same scientific method that you just described to find misunderstanding and or potential lack of understanding.
Yeah, and you have that humble attitude that says, "I'm just not there yet. I don't know. We don't know." And there's
I
nothing
mean,
wrong
if
with
there's
finding.
anything I'm good at, it's being humble. I mean, I
Right? Yeah, and so that's me too.
am.
I one of my favorite things, I just talking about this morning with my students is one of my favorite emotions, and it's gonna sound really counterintuitive, is I love going into a room full of smart people and being the dumbest guy in the room. I
You
love
know,
it.
man, like, the hair stood up on my arms when you said that. I too, I mean, I just love surrounding myself with people that I can learn from, you
Yeah.
know? It
And you know what? That takes a massive amount of maturity on your part. I mean, it's a humility, but it also takes an enormous amount of courage because, and it's very noble because you're recognizing that this is the only way I'm going to get better. is if I hang out with people who are smarter than me. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna change.
Yeah.
And so I tell my students, if you know this, I don't have the chapter and verse in front of me, but it's a quote long attributed to the late great physicist Richard Feynman, and he's supposed to have said, "If you ever find yourself, the smartest person in the room, you need to find a different room."
Yeah.
I'm kind
Yeah.
of paraphrasing, but that's kind of the idea. And it's when I heard that, I thought, gosh, that's kind of how I've always tried to live. I really enjoy that feeling. When I go to conferences, communication conferences, I go back and see my mentors, the people that I consider some of my geniuses in my world, my scientific heroes, and so on. I just sit and have a beer with them, and I'm feel good and dumb for 2 hours while they sit and chat. Um,
That's a good feeling if
yeah,
you can embrace it. Yeah.
yeah. Now, I don't know if I'm allowed to say have a beer or not. I kinda screwed that up, but
You're no, you're
yeah,
just
oh,
fine.
okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
apologize. I didn't want to. I
I'll,
ruined it.
if I fall off the wagon because you said have a beer, I'll
Yeah,
I'll 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 send you a letter and let you know.
my
No.
moment of candor has, eclipsed my trigger warning. Sorry.
No, no. Well, and, on that point, I don't have a desire to rush out and have a beer. I mean, I just spent some time in Las Vegas, and, I didn't, drink any beer, I didn't gamble, and I didn't kill any hookers.
Good
So,
for you. Yeah, good,
yeah,
and
thanks,
good for the
thanks.
hookers.
Yeah, right, right. Good for me and good for the hookers,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
We don't wish anything bad for anybody involved.
Yeah,
That's
and I mean,
okay.
there was a time in my life where, uh the allure of alcohol was such that it was completely dominating and controlling.
Yeah,
But fortunately, through the recovery support process and relationships that I have and growth and maturity in myself, that it does not have that allure anymore.
good.
So not only is it okay that somebody say, "Oh, I went and had a beer," I'm sometimes around people who are enjoying a alcoholic beverage and that doesn't bother me. Now, again,
Yeah.
there was a process of recovery that I went through, but it's okay that some people have a healthy relationship with alcohol.
Yeah, good. Well, good for you. Yeah. I mean, I know we've been buddies for a few years now through our work with LaughFest and so
Yeah.
on. And it's been a joy to watch what you're doing too with, with your comedy and how you're kind of taking your own personal journey and turning it into something that you can help other people out with. And so it's fun. So I applaud you, my friend.
Well, thank you, and the stuff that we work together with on LaughFest, laughter for the health of it, and the Laughter RX stuff. That's something that I'm so passionate about, and I've seen your passion and your talent
Oh,
with that. As you did that keynote address at the symposium in March. I mean, I'm just gonna say it. I was floored by your ability to talk to a room full of medical professionals and have them laughing and have them understanding all at the same time. It was great.
oh, well, thank you. I mean, well, people are people. I've found that whether I'm on the football field, again, I had really good mentors there too. And someone said that, 99, like not 99, but 95% of a football officiating is managing people. Yeah, you got to know the rules and yeah, you got to know where you need to be on a certain kind of play. But the rest of it really is learning how to manage personalities, manage conflict, manage the temperature outside when people are kind of getting hot and the temperature, not physically hot, but when they're starting to get a little chippy at each other and learning how to take those things down. And it's really managing people. And that's kind of the same thing that I do when I go talk to a room full of what do we have? Nurses and social workers and so on. So these are people who see kind of the worst of humanity on a daily basis. And they I'm not going to tell them anything they don't already know about their jobs. And so I'm not going to try to. Instead, it's, hey, here's some ideas that I picked up through my own curiosities and through my own kind of just doing some research about things because I like to know about the world. And some of these ideas seem to hook into the work you're doing. And if you can find value in that, then way to go. But yeah, you can't come in being the guy that acts like he knows all the things. I look at what I do as kind of learning with people instead of so much just I'm not the sage on the stage. I like to be the guide on the side, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I'm
So,
not the fount of dispensing facts. Rather, it's here's some ideas that I've been rolling around in my head based on some idea or some things I've been reading. There's some books or some research articles. Here's what they seem to mean to me. I'd love to hear what you think they mean to you. And from there, maybe we can create some new kind of understanding together. That's all. That's the stuff that I think about when I give any kind of talk, really.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that that makes a lot of sense to me, and I think it's effective because I mean we get so much information. We're bombarded with messages and data, and I mean we just get overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah.
If you can make a connection, which is a word you used earlier, connecting with people, you know, if you can make a connection with somebody and have them walk away with the emotion of that connection tied with just one thing, just one truth, then boy, that's going to be the most effective thing ever.
Yeah, right. Yeah, in a lot of cases, you're right because I mean, even with my students, in many cases, they forget most of the facts and figures you threw at them, but they remember how you made them feel that day.
That's yep,
They're going
yep,
to
yeah.
stick with that, and if you made them feel good, then they might trust you well enough to learn a few more facts and figures the next day.
That's
And
yep.
they're going to forget half of those, but they're still going to remember how you made them feel on that next day, and that's
Boy, you just
critical.
said trust. You just said trust. Man, what a word.
Yeah, and it's so important. I mean, that's the currency that keeps us together these days, and it's the thing that is in many cases, if you just, read media reports, it's hanging by a thread right now. And
Yeah.
I don't know that it's as bad as the media make it sound, I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. But it definitely makes us think that this thing could be threatened, and it's probably worth being smarter about how we take care of it. And so I try to keep those things in mind, whether I'm working a football game or I'm giving a LaughFest talk or whether I'm in front of my class and we're learning about statistics. I want them to trust that I'm here because I've got their best interests at heart. And I don't always have the answers. You can trust me to say I don't know when I honestly don't know, but we're going to try and find out some answers together.
Well, I think you're doing it, my friend. And the opportunities that I've had to connect with you on a professional basis and accomplish things, you leave the world a better place than when you came into it. You leave the room a better place than what it was when you came into it. You are making an impact. And I think some of those driving forces that are so uh, important and powerful in your life, that curiosity, that humble skepticism, that ability to research and find truth. And then, most importantly, that ability to connect with people and communicate with them. I just see that as such an admirable trait. I mean, you're doing it, and you're connecting with people, and you're making the world a better place through your talents and your gifts.
Well, it's more kindness than I deserve, and I'm glad this is audio only because I'm sure I'm turning 18 shades of red right now. So
Well, yeah,
it's an
and
honor. It's an honor.
this has been fun. Thank you so much for letting us know a little bit about who Dr. Jayson Dibble is. And we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, I would love to know something that's going well in your life and something that you're struggling with.
Well, I'll do my
Thank
best to think up something.
All right. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back. Jason, again, thank you for sharing a little bit about who you are. What is something that's going well in your life right now?
What's going well? I probably have a lot of things going well, but the one that when you asked me to talk about this, the first thing that came to my mind right now is my students are going well. They're going probably better than I expected. So I work at Hope College. We're a small liberal arts college. We got about 3,200 students. And compared to a lot of the other area universities and so on, we are still offering in person classes. And knock on wood, we haven't had to shut down or force everybody into remote learning. I wasn't sure how that was going to work. I was a little apprehensive. And I'll be honest that when they first asked, how did I want to teach this coming fall? The main reason I said in person was because I wasn't sure if they were going to force us to or not. And if they were going to force us to, then I wanted to make sure I had classroom space reserved for my class. So I was a little bit selfish motivated, but it turned out that they actually allowed faculty to make their own decision. And I would say about half of us went in person. Maybe another 30% are doing what we call hybrid, which is you do one day in person and then the rest remote. And then we have about 20% who are fully remote. Don't quote me on the percentages. I might be screwing some of those up. But basically, we have a mix here at Hope. And so I chose in person. And so I'm going in there first day of class and thinking, okay, let's see what's going to happen. Of course, now my classroom that they put me in is over in the field house where they play basketball and volleyball. And I've got a classroom full of 30 students who normally would fit nice and comfortably and intimately in a traditional size classroom. But because we had to do the COVID spacing and everything, they stuck me in this really long room that's probably 150 feet long by maybe 30 feet wide.
Ugh.
And it's really difficult to reach those students in the back because, I mean, people in the back row would snooze on a normal day. Now stick them 150 feet behind you, in its or out in front of you, and you can almost not see them, let alone hear them. So it's really had to change the way that I teach because again, I'm trying to build that intimacy. I'm trying to build that connection. So, but I'm also having to do it through a mask. So we all wear our masks, and all I can see are their eyes. So it's a little weird because if we were meeting over Zoom, I could see your whole face, but if we're in person, I only get your eyes. So I'm still missing some potential information, and I'm wondering how this is all going to play out. But me being the communication guy, and I've studied a little bit about nonverbal communication, and one of the things we know from some communication theory that we have is that if you give people enough time, they will find ways to put back the missing nonverbal information.
Hmm.
So
Really?
one of the ways we first saw this was a long time ago, back in the early 90s. Now think back to your very first email account.
Okay. Yeah.
Think back the computer monitor you were looking at for that. Right? Those old cathode ray
Oh yeah.
amber screens, right? So I'm at Western Michigan University. I'm a little freshman. I got my first email account. It's 1993. And it's just one color. And so you're emailing people, and people said back then, oh, you don't have the richness of face to face communication. There's no way you could ever have any sort of work teams, or you could never build any kind of relationship through the sterile, what we call Q lean medium. There just aren't enough cues there for you to infer people's meaning. You're going to be messed up all over the place. Well, we had some communication theorists back then, even back then, who said, no, I think you're wrong. What you need is to give them enough time. And if they have enough time interacting in this environment, they will find ways to build connections. And it takes longer, yes, but they will find ways to establish connections. And it will be at least as good as what you would had in your face-to-face environment. And so what ended up happening from here is you had things like emoticons. Remember the little smileys you would make with like a
Yeah.
colon and a parentheses and so on. So these emoticons were little nonverbal cues that we would put to kind of put the emotion back into our text. And then that gave way later to text messaging. And then pretty soon they created the emojis. So now we have these little fully artistically drawn little tiny pictures that help us do a little bit better job than the emoticons did. But it's all in that same vein. It's all serving that same purpose of putting back in the missing nonverbal information, which humans have always been good at. So now flash forward to 2019, or I guess 2020, because that's when we really had to first start wearing our masks. And everybody would start going, oh, I can't wear a mask. I can never read anybody's faces. But what we're finding is actually my students are very good at reading each other's faces. I haven't had anybody raise their hand yet to say they couldn't understand what I was saying. I haven't had anybody say, I have no idea what you're talking about. When the students ask questions, I can track exactly where they are, and I have never seen them from the nose down,
Okay.
from the eyes down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
have no idea what their lips look like. I have no idea what their nose looks like. All I have seen is their eyes. But you know what? We're actually pretty good at picking up at who's happy, who's not, who's having a good day, who looks like they might be struggling right now. Because when I think back on it, I'm doing it pretty much with the same fluidity I would if we didn't have our masks on.
Okay. Okay.
So that tells me that this communication theorist, who, again, if you know communication theory, his name is Joe Walther. He's another one of my mentors. I think Joe Walther's ideas are turning out to be right yet again.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you ask if what's going well, I would say that's a thing. Obviously, nobody loves the masks. We're doing it because we're trying to keep each other alive. But if we have to do it, it's good to know that there's actually some theory and some science behind what we're doing in terms of our communication with others, that it's not a lost cause. Just because we're covering our mouth and our nose doesn't mean all hope is lost and that we have absolutely no way to read each other, because now this is forcing us to notice other cues that we didn't pay attention to before.
Yeah.
You know, you didn't pay attention to emojis before there was emojis. You didn't pay attention to emoticons before there was emoticons,
Right,
right?
right, right.
We didn't pay
Or
attention to eye movement.
Decepticons or
Yeah, yeah, Decepticons. Those are the best. Oh yeah. But we didn't pay attention to eye movements and eye shape and so on until we had to. And now we have to, and it's been a good thing. You know, if we have to do the mask thing, obviously I'd love to be able to see their faces and smile and the whole picture, but it's nice to know that human beings are resilient enough and that we have the ingenuity already hardwired into our lizard brains that says you can do this. You will find a way. Your mind will find a way, and the drive to connect with others is strong enough that we will reach through seeming barriers like masks and so on. And so that's working out in the classrooms. It's working out in the restaurants that I've been going into. It works out on the football field. We wear our masks out there. And people just kind of go on. They realize that there are bigger fish to fry here than fighting about a mask. And the more important issue is that we still have each other. We can connect with each other. And if we connect, we can build trust. If we can build trust, we can work together. And maybe we can defeat this stupid virus and this awful virus that's really not good, and we can find a better way forward.
Well, it doesn't surprise me at all to hear that that is something that's going well in your life, because coming into it, it's a challenge, but there's a curiosity. Is this going to work? How is this going to work? How am I going to be able to
Yeah,
connect? How am I going to be able to communicate? And then to see that be effective. It's not surprising to me that you would think back on that or experience that on a daily basis and think this is where it's at. That makes a lot of sense to me. It's also really interesting to hear you talk through the human process of problem solving there.
mm,
We want to connect, we want to communicate. All of a sudden, you throw up a literal barrier in
mm,
communication of a mask, and then we as people figure out how to solve that problem. We're problem solvers.
mm-hmm,
That's what we do. And if we go for too long of a period without having problems to solve, we'll die. it's
mm-hmm,
so it's I think I think this virus is a terrible thing. I think
mm,
that there's been mass discomfort and worse as a result of this. But there are some good things that have come out of it. There are some
yeah,
good things of having to wear a mask. Like you said, it fires our brains back up of how can we connect and communicate? How can we be more observant of other people? That's good stuff.
yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
And I hope that people, that I hope people will read encouragement into that. And that's kind of the idea, is that, yes, we're problem solvers. And I kind of wish that would be more the message coming from our our state and national leaders, is
Yeah.
that, hey, we're people of resolve. We are people who can solve problems, whether you're the farmer who figured out a way to keep crows out of the farm or out of the backyard, or whether you're somebody who's coming up with a new interferon treatment for, I don't even know what kind of disease interferons treat, because I'm talking
Yeah, it's
out of my beehole. But and I kind of looked at that as, my dad is this kind of guy. He's a tinkerer. He's a problem solver. He's one of those kind of guys that, if you get the duct tape out, or you work out, I got a problem, I got to fix the problem. And it's not always the prettiest solution, but it gets the job done. And I don't have his handy capabilities. I always call him to hang my TV on my wall and so on, drill holes and stuff. I don't know how to work that kind of stuff, but I guess maybe some of his problem solving nature rubbed off on me, in the sense of the way I look at what my students are doing and what we're doing with the masks, and how we're trying to find, I guess, solving problems with communication.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
so it's another kind of problem solving. But you're right, I hope it's something that we can use to encourage others, and to remind us that, yeah, the human species are pretty hardy, we're pretty strong. And at a species level, we are tough to kill. We are going to get back up. There might be a disease that gets some of us, but it's not going to get all of us. And we are going to find a way forward here.
yeah, yeah. And I think that we can appreciate the positive things or appreciate the opportunities without denying the negative things.
Sure,
Like
of
you
course.
said, this is a serious thing.
Oh yeah, it's a
But
global killer.
it is, yeah. But it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to solve problems. It's an opportunity to step into a disrupted system and
Mm,
uh, and make things better on the other side, or at least survivable.
mhm. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned disrupted systems too, because that's another thing when it comes, just to bring it back to my students, that on the same theme of what's going well, I'm also encouraged to see them engaging intellectually. I love all my classes. I don't, but this particular semester feels a little different, in the sense that I can sense the palpable gratitude coming out of them,
Mm,
that they're glad we're doing this in person.
yeah.
Now I can't speak to what they're doing off campus. We have our little come to Jesus talks every day, where I say, listen, you guys go ahead, you party as hard as you want to with your housemates.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
time to be doing the block party. This isn't the time to be inviting your cousin from back home to come spend the weekend with you. Don't do that right now, But I'm not saying you can't do your party thing. Just do it with the people you live with right now, because we're trying to get through a pandemic here. Um, but I do sense that they're grateful that we're teaching in person. They're taking it seriously. They're not complaining about the masks. They stay in their seats. My hearts, my thoughts and prayers go out to our elementary education teachers. Those students, I've got adult learners. That's easy,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. But they're not complaining. They're asking great questions. I just feel like there's a sense of intellectualism coming out of them, and a curiosity coming out of them, that I haven't seen this way in a long time.
Wow.
Um, I think maybe part of it's just they're tired of shouldering all the bullying and the bad behavior, and they're tired of seeing inequality now, and they're starting to realize that, hey, wait a minute, if we buckle down and start to reshape the way our minds solve problems out here, we can start to address some of these things.
Mm,
And I don't see my students' generation wanting to tolerate the same things that maybe some of their older generations seem to be. And that gives me hope. I'm excited. That's going well. That they're actually trying to get back to the business of being human, and wanting to take care of other humans, because taking care of humans is the right thing to do. And so, yeah, that all adds up as things that are going well.
well, that is exciting. That's exciting to hear them about them engaging. That's exciting about hearing good things happening and a disruptive time leading to incredible things. So that's cool. What's one thing you're struggling with right now, Jason?
Struggling, relatedly, this is something that kind of weighs on my heart a lot, my head a lot. It shows up in the classes we talk about. Um, And it's just hard to get away from, especially sometimes you just turn off social media because, um, I mean, there's no denying we do live in a more polarized society. I don't think it's quite as bad as what Twitter makes it look like. Because when you really do sit down and have conversations with people, you start to find out that, we might vote differently in certain ways and certain situations, but at the end of the day, we do have a lot of common concerns. And if we'll just shut up long enough to listen to each other, we will start to dig out some of those common concerns. So my hope is that we still have that kernel inside us that can make us do that. But the struggle is how it looks right now. I can see even with my students, right? They're looking for some direction. They're looking for some adults to stand up an adult here and to say, wait a minute, can somebody model some better behavior, model a better way forward for us? And the struggle for me is how do I reach people given our increasingly polarized environment? And one of the things that I'm feeling right now is just this attack on science that's happening. I've just never thought we would ever have to question scientific consensus about some consensuses, consensi. I don't even know how you say it, but the consensus, for example, climate change. There is a very strong consensus about climate change. There is a very strong scientific consensus about germs and what spreads illness, right? We've known about germ theory for a long time. This isn't in doubt. And to hear other people talk about it as if, well, we're not sure that the scientists really know, um, I have a problem with people speaking for the scientists when the scientists are very good at using their own voice.
Hmm.
They've got their own system. They've got their way of sharing findings. They've got a peer-reviewed publication system that works to prevent mistakes from getting out. And when mistakes do come out, science is what we call a self-correcting process. It may not happen on a dime, but that doesn't mean the process of science is broken. It means science is working as it was designed to, which is when better data come out that show an old idea to be wrong, we overthrow that old idea in favor of the new idea. For example, people thought for, over 1,000 years that the earth was the center of the universe and the sun went around it. Well, we don't think that anymore, but no one says, well, science was stupid. Science wasn't stupid. They came along with better data. It took a while, but they had better data and they realized that this is a wrong idea. So we reject the wrong idea. So I really have a problem right now with people playing fast and loose, dragging science into their, politics and whatnot, when science was never wanted to go there. We just want to answer questions about the world. And how do I reach people then where, how do I come in now as the scientist who's kind of been put in this one down position? I'm kind of stuck down in the hole now because somebody with a louder megaphone has already said, no, these scientists don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And we're going, wait a minute. No, we do know what we're talking about. Remember, we're humble skeptics, right? So
Yeah.
we're not going to go where we don't think we have an answer. When we do think we have an answer, we will share it with you. You probably ought to listen. So that's a struggle that I'm personally feeling right now because it's something that I never ever thought in my whole life would come under massive question like this.
Yeah. Well, and I can see why that would be such a struggle,
Oh my God.
because that's something that, I mean, you literally have based your education and your life around,
Oh yeah.
and career. I mean, this is a centerpiece to who you are,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's under question and it's under doubt. And I mean, I think there's some very unfortunate and real reasons why it is under question and doubt. And I think, you said people using their voice to express the science, when you might as well just let the scientists express it because
They're
they're
very
better
good
at it.
at They've been doing it for a long
That's
time.
right. That's right. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening.
Ugh.
It's the name of science is being used many times to advance political agendas.
Oh yeah.
And that, I mean, that's going to sow so much distrust that it loses its it loses its value. It's a horrendous thing. you know,
It's
and
crazy. I mean, we for centuries we've been using religion to advance political agendas, and now we've grabbed science doing
right.
hijinks. I'm
Yeah,
going, my gosh, you're
yeah,
doing it wrong.
that's right, you know, and, yeah, religion falls into the same category.
Ugh,
Religion is a beautiful thing, but as soon as it's taken to advance individual, status and or political, agendas, it loses all value, and
yeah.
and it's a shame. It really is, 'cause science and religion are both, very important, and you know, they're both very important, and to see both of those things completely lose all credibility because some knucklehead in the office, who that's about as riled up as I get. You know, somebody in office is using that, primarily out of context, probably, to advance their own political agenda.
Well, and I tell my students, I mean, I teach right here in West Michigan. I know who my audience in many cases are, and that doesn't bother me. I teach a class on stats and research methods. That's why I thought this is the most neutral, sterile class you could ever have. I mean, if what in the world? This is the last place I thought politics would come into the play.
Right.
And yet, even my students now, it's that every question they ask, it's like, well, how do we understand, and to their credit, sometimes they're just trying to understand things like polling and so on. So,
Yeah.
and I approach it not from the standpoint of, well, what's this, dirty, rotten candidate trying to do? But
Mhm.
it's okay. Let's learn. We've learned about measurement. So now let's look at this survey that somebody got in the mail, and let's look at it from its measurement merits in terms of as a scientific instrument of getting honest attitudes about XYZ politician. And so I try to always preface it with, listen, I don't care how you guys vote. I'd love for you to vote. I'd like for you to participate, but that's not my point. My point is for you to stand up for the truth. And when the
Mhm.
truth itself, I mean, I'm talking capital T, ground truth, is under attack these days, if we can't agree to some truths, we can't do business. We can't communicate. Our brains have to work too hard to figure out, well, what is Aaron's version of what he's talking about and what's Jason's version of what he's talking about. If we can't take for granted some basic capital T ground truths, then we are headed for just a disaster. I mean, humans won't be able to function as a collective society anymore, because we have to be able to trust that, if only 10 people came to your party, it was 10 people. It wasn't 10,000 people.
Yeah.
Um, and we have to be able to trust that if you said the sky was red tonight, then the sky really was red tonight. It wasn't some
Mhm.
other color. It's got to be, we've got to have some things that we can agree to, in order to be able to connect.
Yeah.
And if
Well,
we
and
can't
and you
connect, we
said
won't survive.
scattered throughout there, you said it multiple times, and you said it earlier when you were talking about, really fundamentals of communication. Trust.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if there's no capital T truth, then there is no trust either.
Yeah. You that's the thing. And the science knows where it can go, and scientists know where they have ideas, and they also know where they can't go. They don't go into the areas that they don't have any say over. So I would encourage the others to stay in their lane as well and rely on your experts. This whole idea of, well, the experts don't know anything. Well, that's not true. I mean, at the end of the day, are you really going to just, if you're sick with something, are you just going to go ahead and self-diagnose everything? Or are
Right.
you, at some point, you're going to go into the hospital and let an expert take care of it? Or are you never going to turn on your weather forecast? Or are you just going to go get your own meteorology degree? I mean, the world is too big of a place for one person to know it all. So it makes sense that we have experts who specialize in things.
Yeah.
And just because you maybe get an expert who made a mistake, or in some cases, you do have some false prophets out there, some false experts. And I've got them in my own field, in my own world that I share with my students, who are my scientific nemesis, whatever, my nemesis.
Yeah.
Um, but by and large, the business of relying on experts is a good thing. It does serve us in the long run. it would do us well to be, give a little more deference to our experts. And we also have to know the difference between a well reasoned and evidence based opinion versus just, well, that's my opinion, so I deserve equal airtime.
Yeah.
Um, you
I
know,
think we need peer-reviewed Twitter accounts.
yeah, my gosh. Everybody's just, that's their answer to everything right now is, well, that's my opinion, so you need to take me seriously. And no, I don't. You're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled for me to take you seriously.
Yeah.
That's under my control.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and we've got everybody treating everything. If we want to fight about whether chocolate or strawberry ice cream is the greatest ice cream in the world, we can do that. Even though I would say neither, it's Moose Tracks. But but that's very different from saying something like, well, science has no opinion on climate change. They don't know. Or science
Yeah.
isn't sure about the effectiveness of vaccines. Not true. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
polio vaccines saved a country.
Right. Yep.
They're very confident in what vaccines can do.
Yeah. Well,
But we also go ahead.
and that on that, people will be more apt to believe science when people stop using the name of science for things that aren't science.
I don't know what people are going to believe these days. It blows my mind how, in some ways it's a little scary because a lot of these ideas that I've taught about, um, in using case studies from other countries are finally playing out here. And I'm going, ugh, you know,
Yeah.
this is where this has been a total gut check in terms of, I thought Americans were kind of immune to that line of thinking. But the truth is, no, we still fall in line when we hear somebody that we consider to be an authority. And we still get addicted to power. And we still want, when you're powerful, you want more power. And we still do have a struggle here with, some systemic race issues that are kind of baked into the founding of our country, and we've never really been able to wrestle with those. And I don't know what the answers are to everything, but I know that it's all kind of bubbling up to a head right now. And I wish we could get back to a way where people recognized good faith efforts in one another. And I think we've lost some of that. It's everybody just thinks you have an angle and that you're just trying to game the system. And instead of going, well, no, I'm making a good faith effort here to find a job. And my situation kind of threw me some bad luck. And I'm not trying to make excuses for that bad luck. But at the same time, if this system doesn't let me crawl out of the hole, there's no way I'm going to be able to crawl out of the hole.
Yeah.
I do need someone to drop a ladder. I'm not saying you got to push me up it, but drop the ladder and give me a chance to climb it up. And why we can't do that anymore, I don't understand.
Well, and I'm an optimist. I look at the trash can as half
Me too.
empty.
My eyes are 20/20, man. I went and saw mine the other day, and he said, "Got 20/20 vision." No, well, that's not what you meant.
Right,
Sorry,
right. You thought I said optometrist.
that's what I said. I'm setting booty traps.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I mean, I look ahead and I look back and I see a history of people solving problems. I look
Mhm.
backwards and I see a species long history of surviving attacks and thriving through them. So that gives me an
Except for the
optimistic,
ones that don't.
except for the ones, yeah, yeah,
Except for the ones that don't.
yeah. That's fair. Yeah, yeah. Well, we'd have a huge overpopulation problem if yeah, but I look ahead and I see good things. I look ahead and I see disruptive times laying out crystal clear challenges and problems, and then people solving them.
Yeah,
You know, I see us coming together more in unity, in part because I can't see us becoming less united than we are right now. Um, but boy, it's really, to be quite honest, it's really hard for me to not be negative. uh,
yeah,
this is a
and we need that.
we need
We need that.
We
I
need
mean,
negative or positive
no,
or
no, no,
both?
no, we need positive because, I mean, that's the truth is, if we evolved as a species to be that's right, I'm a Christian who buys evolution, strike me down. But, if we evolved as a species to all be pessimists, the human species would have died out a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah,
If we had I mean, think about it, if we had to constantly scrutinize every sentence that came out of your head, and I had to fact check every single thing you said without being able to take any of it as truth, I would have died out from hunger or something because I wasn't getting things done.
yeah, yeah,
You know, if I had to ask you, okay, which way are the buffalo so that I can go hunt and feed my family, and you pointed in one direction, and I go, oh no, he's lying. I got to go check every other three of the 359 degrees on the
right,
compass
right.
before I go to that one. I would have died. We would have died of hunger. So we have to be optimists. I mean, that's got to be the dominant philosophy here. And it's a well said point, my friend. I take your point, and I hope that people will kind of tap back into their optimism that's kind of been thrown in off to the side for the moment.
Yeah,
We need it.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, this has been a fun chat, my friend. If people wanted to reach you and find out more about the science behind communication or anything like that, how can they do so?
Well, you can. I guess I don't know. Should I email me? So is that
Sure. Yeah,
what they do?
if
Is
that's what you
you
want.
can email me. The quickest way would be at just my personal email address, which is Jayson Jayson .dibble Dibble at gmail.com. So blame my parents for the extra letter there, but it's Jason with a Y. So it's Jason.dibble at gmail.com. And that's probably the quickest way to reach me. Otherwise, you can just call Aaron and he can come hang out and ask your question to me, and we'll get back to you that way, one way or another.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. I think this was a really valuable chat. I think we covered a lot of ground and some really cool stuff. So thanks for sharing your perspective on a lot of different things, sir. It's been fun getting to know you even a little bit more than I already did. Thank you all for listening. If you ever want to reach me, the best way to do so is always my website, theunemployedalcoholic.com. Go check that out. There is videos of me doing stand-up comedy. There's links to this episode and other episodes of both this podcast and the Clean Comedy podcast, and just a ton of other stuff. Go check it out. It'll be worth your while. Thanks for being you, and have a great day.
I would go snorkeling or scuba diving anywhere